Hello and welcome to the morning sports briefing here on the 21st of April at 8 a.m. And we are at 8 a.m. every day of the week. That's right, 7 days a week, even the weekend, here on New Zealand Sports Radio. Hi, I'm Paul. I'll be your host for today. And in our headlines, we have Todd Greenbury falls on his sword, wage cuts continue, spit and polish. The Pacific Rugby Players Welfare weigh-in on World Rugby Vote, and Paige Hareb has some different housemates. And to get us on the way, I'll hand you straight over to Steve from the Deep South, who will give us his football update.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and it's time to fill your boots with the best way to start your day yet again. It's time for the football news, and today we have a crazy idea for the A-League. We have a club that's banning headers for kids, but first, we have quite a bit of news around the wages being slashed over in the UK and Europe, and a new precedent has been set for the players' wage cuts, with Roma players volunteering to forego 4 months of salary to help the club's finances during a pandemic. The players, manager Paulo Fonseca, and staff who are all going to pay the difference for all the staff to be paid fully during this time as well. The gesture was led by Captain Eden Dzeko, who forwarded the idea to the club hierarchy. Roma do currently sit in 5th position in Serie A between the 4th place Atalanta and 6th place Napoli. On the topic of pay slashes, Watford have become just the 3rd EPL club to agree to wage deferrals, and they joined Southampton and West Ham, who have already confirmed to do the same. Now, Arsenal have just confirmed this morning that they've announced to do a 12.5% pay cut from their players and manager as well. It is expected Chelsea will join them, and they'll add to the move in the coming days as well. APIA Leichhardt have become the first Australian club to announce that they have banned heading for players under 12 for the risk of concussion and head injuries. For players 13 and up, players' heads and necks have developed more, so they plan to gradually introduce heading into their training regimes from then on up. And finally, we do have one for you all to debate. So I want everyone to get involved in this one. Leave your comments below, and the guys can have their say as well. I'm quite interested to know what they think. But in some situations like this, I'm not sure whether I want to laugh or cry, but this one is certainly one of them. Now, Australian former professional footballer Craig Johnston has thrown the idea of a 6-a-side soccer tournament or football tournament with 4 15-minute quarters to be thrown into the middle of the A-League season. Now, he claims that football in Australia needs to adopt a Big Bash style league like the cricket season has. His suggestions have come under fire from other former professionals who have said such razzmatazz is the last thing football needs, and the idea should be hit for 6. Now, I'm interested to what everyone knows about that. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Or Paul, what do you reckon? Does football need a big little sort of razzmatazz tournament? I feel like Justin Marshall saying that in their football season in the A-League. What do you guys reckon?
It's a bit, you say, it's a bit like the Big Bash. 6-a-side sounds a bit like foosball, doesn't it? So I think they already have that. It's just a matter of getting, or the Masters football. It's just a matter of getting the right names and publicity for it. To be honest, I think it already exists. It seems like inventing a game for a game that's already there. Arthur and Stephen?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, but I think everybody's been, since the lockdown, I think everybody's been trying to look for a different angle. And hey, I suppose any idea is a good idea, I suppose.
But I remember when 2020 came in, and we used to play 2020 after work, and it was kind of like, well, yeah, it's what people just do. But hey, it's taken off, hasn't it? Let's move on to birthdays then. Stephen, let's take Stephen from the far north. You can take us through who are the birthday boys and girls today.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and good morning, everybody. And birthdays this morning, we have very much an Olympic theme. Firstly, one of the great New Zealand Olympians, dual internationals in the oval ball code, and a black stick Olympian. And that's pretty much where we're going to start this morning. Rachel Petrie is a former field hockey defender who played for New Zealand at the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney. Petrie played for the New Zealand women's team called the Black Sticks between 1996 and 2000. Rachel Jane Petrie, born this day on the 21st of April, 1971 in Ashburton. Rachel is 49 today. Moving on to the oval ball code. Niall Williams is a New Zealand Rugby Sevens player and former New Zealand touch football captain. She is a member of New Zealand Women's National Rugby Sevens team and was selected for their squad to the 2016 Summer Olympics, when New Zealand claimed the silver medal behind Australia. In touch football, she won gold at the 2005 Youth World Cup and silver at the 2011 Touch Football World Cup. Niall Williams, born this day, 21st of April, 1988. Niall is 32 today. The dual international is also the younger sister of Sonny Bill Williams. And finally, on to an absolute New Zealand legend. Daniel Loader is a former world champion swimmer, Olympic champion and record holder. Based in Dunedin, he remains the national record holder in the 400 and 1500 metre freestyle short course. He swam for New Zealand at 2 Summer Olympics, 1992 and 1996, and 3 Commonwealth Games, 1990, 1994 and 1998. At the 1992 Olympics in Barcelona, he garnered a silver medal in the 200 meters butterfly. In 1996 in Atlanta, Loader won 2 gold medals in the 200 and 400 meter freestyle. He set world records in the short course, 200 butterfly, 400 freestyle. In the 1997 New Year Honours List, Loader was appointed an officer of the New Zealand Order of Merit for services to swimming, and he was inducted into the International Swimming Hall of Fame in 2003. Daniel Joseph Loader, ONZM, born this date on the 21st of April, 1975, beg your pardon, in Timaru. Daniel is 45 today, an absolute sporting legend. Back to you, Paul.
Thank you very much, Stephen. You had good to stop yourself from laughing there towards the end. But yeah, congratulations on your pronunciation of Barcelona. And happy birthday to all of them. Moving on to rugby news now. Then, and I've gone and skipped cricket. Sorry, Ashwin. We nearly missed you out there. Go on, cricket news.
I was just like, uh oh. It's just like we've gone on to birthdays. Was I sleeping? Now, look, going on to cricket news, and as mentioned by Paul in the headlines, and no more spit and polish. Is that another casualty of the COVID-19, that we won't be able to have a bit of spit and shine of the old cricket ball? With transmission methods being looked at, the spit and shining could be banned, as well as the spit could be the sweat, which is another alternative favourite of the cricket player. The players concerned about the bodily functions means that they won't be able to protect the ball and maintain the ball, which means that it will get older quicker. And their concern, the bowlers' concerns, obviously, is the fact is that the batters will get even more dominant, which we've seen in the game in the years that have passed recently, where the batsmen are just more and more dominant, and the bowlers seem to be getting a hiding. In other not so gross news, the ICC will be hosting 12 full member countries and 3 associate member countries to take stock of where everybody is at during the pandemic. Likely to be discussed by each country is the government's advice. Each country has different government advice, but one thing's pretty common, is that travel bans will be in place. Also on the agenda to discuss will be the World Test Championship, the Men's T20 World Cup, and the Women's 50 over World Cup. The meeting will be the first step in a collective process assessing the impact across the globe. Meanwhile, in postponement news, South Africa's tour of Sri Lanka has been postponed. Shocked. Totally shocked. Well, not that shocked. The tour, which includes 3 ODIs and 3 T20s, has no new prospective date announced at this stage. South Africa's next program tour was to the West Indies, and that's in July, and a decision expected to be made in May on whether that will go ahead. But newsflash, I think it'll be postponed. And in Australia, the state associations are fighting back a little bit as Cricket Australia look to cut funding to the states of 45%. As I said, the state associations are pushing back on that, And there is a review currently underway of all the association's finances. And I think a decision will be made on what sort of cut will be delivered once that has been completed. And that is the cricket news, Paul, now that I've been remembered.
Oh, so thank you very much, Ashwin. Moving on to rugby news, then the Pacific Rugby Pacific Players Rugby Welfare have weighed in through Dan Leo, written an open letter to World Rugby questioning the allowing that or their processes around vetting people who are voting on the World Committee. Francoise Boulakine, who is the representative for Fiji, who has also been nominated for the for the executive committee. They point out a number of issues around his nomination. Now, you remember that we talked about the other day that it had been pointed out that he has been in jail for manslaughter previously, where he served only 3 months. Also, he is basically banned from travelling to most member countries of rugby, and the only way that he gets around that is that he has a 10-year diplomatic passport. Now, it's questionable as to how and why he should have a diplomatic passport when his main role, or outside of rugby, is being head of the prison services. Over the weekend, the Times also came out with an article where they had a recording of Keane shouting violent and homophobic instructions to his police officers, and as the letter says, whipping them into committing beatings. And this past weekend, 4 of his prison officers have been charged with the death of a prisoner in reprimand due to blunt force trauma, apparently. So, as I point out, look, there are a whole bunch of fit to play and bringing the game into disrepute for players, but are there those also in place for the people who are actually running the game? And so they've highlighted all of this. World Rugby is apparently looking into the homophobic calls, but you've got to say there is a growing body of evidence that he's perhaps not the kind of person that we want, or that the public would want running the game. In other rugby news, it looks like the Crusaders are having to make some people redundant. The CEO, Colin Mainsbridge, would not specify which staff are going to be made redundant, but it's apparently not the coaching staff, and the players working in, not players, staff working in the medical, academy, logistics, and media liaison roles are the most at risk of losing their positions. A sad time, obviously, that they're having to make those kind of cuts, but with the uncertainty as to when sport will restart, you can understand that they're having to watch the dollars. Going to hand you back now to Stephen from the far north, who'll take us through our league news.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. There's quite a bit to get through this morning because it's been a bit of talk in and around NRL circles, and it has finally happened. Tom Greenberg has stood down as the NRL CEO as of yesterday evening after he and the ARL Commission mutually agreed to part ways. It comes after weeks of speculation and frustration aimed at Greenberg. He has largely been the face of the NRL's budget black hole and bloated front office, but has publicly taken a back seat in negotiations with broadcasters as the game deals with the threat of COVID-19. In a statement released by the NRL, Greenberg paid tribute to the game. It has been my great honour and privilege to be the CEO of the NRL for the last 4 years. The statement read, despite the variety of challenges and pressures, I have loved every single minute of the journey. Our growth over the last 4 years has been extraordinary, and I am very proud of my contribution to the game. I am indebted to the game for the variety of opportunities and experiences that have been provided to my family and I, and we leave with many great memories and lifelong friendships. My sincere thanks to all the stakeholders across the game, particularly the fans, who are the lifeblood of rugby league. Their unwavering passion for the game is wonderful. I remain in awe of the players' skill and bravery to play this game week in and week out, and I thank all of them, both past and present, for their friendship and support. My thanks also to the staff and executive team at the NRL. It has been an absolute honour to lead this team of talented, resilient and hard-working professionals. Andrew Abdor has been appointed as the acting CEO while the search for a new CEO begins. So there we have it. It has happened, bit of speculation, but I suppose Peter V'landys probably comes into the frame as a possible CEO, having that he has been a big part of the negotiations with the broadcasters moving forward. And finally, in league news, well, it wouldn't be rugby league without somebody having a shot. And this time it's New South Wales Origin coach Brad Fittler, who's been labelled ridiculous by the Office of the Queensland Premier Anastasia Palaszczuk as their war of words heats up. The Premiership last week put the brakes on the NRL's May 28th return date and flagged cancelling State of Origin altogether in the 2020 due to the COVID-19 lockdown. Fittler wasn't a fan of that and fired off at the Premier over the weekend. Given it's not too far away, give it a chance. I find it ludicrous, Fittler said. We're playing. I don't care if your team turns up or not. We're playing. It'll be 3-0. Not having an open mind is pretty unpolitical of them. You've got an industry that employs a lot of people ticking all the boxes, and you've got the Premier of Queensland just dragging it down. In a statement to the Sydney Morning Herald, the Queensland government hit back at Fittler's comments. It's ridiculous. The Premier is in the midst of a global pandemic and is managing the health concerns for all Queensland, a spokesman for Palaszczuk said. They always come first. The Premier has said often that the health advice comes first, and that is all the news in rugby league. But I must admit, I'm having a bit of a chuckle. When hasn't somebody in rugby league had a shot at another person?
Well, yes, they do seem to have a go at each other, don't they? Moving on then, yesterday in New Zealand, the government announced that we would be staying in level 4 until the end of Monday next week, so after the Anzac weekend, and then moving down to level 3. And a lot of sports are really looking at how quickly and what can they do at different levels. National MP Chris Bishop has come out and said that golfers will be allowed to play golf. He said the government have said that. Now, the first thing I would say across this next piece, please, is check official guidelines. This is just, before you go out and do anything, this is just an update of what people are saying may or may not be allowed. I say, please do check official guidelines before you go out and do anything. But Chris Bishop is suggesting that the golf will be allowed back. We've already heard that surfing, cycling, tramping will be allowed, but anything that involves motors won't be. So yachting is still to be looked at, but expected not to be allowed, and definitely motorboats aren't. Fishing off the wharf or off the coast will also be allowed. So a lot of sports people may be allowed to get back, maybe in the water or onto their bikes. Yesterday, I published an interview with Ben Kennings from the Surfing in New Zealand, and he was talking about how that they basically hadn't been allowed in the water. So go back and listen to that interview from yesterday. It was really insightful into the world of surfing. So there's a lot of people looking at what they may or may not be allowed to do. But one of the things that has come out from the government's head of sport Minister for Sport, is that professional sport will not be back at level 2. At level 3. Level 2 is another matter now. We're not going to be getting down to level 2 until at least after the 11th of May. But already New Zealand's National Basketball League are looking at trying to be the first sport back in action. They're coming up with a plan to have a 5-week season centralized in one location, playing games every single day. So clearly a lot of content there for their TV partner. So they're looking at being ready to go as soon as they get down to alert level 2, if, of course, regulations allow them to do so. Clearly, that would be behind closed doors. Initially, they're looking at hosting that out of Auckland because of the facilities that they have available there, both from a playing and also from a broadcasting point of view. So you may get a very condensed, intense a basketball season coming up. Foreign players will be allowed to play, but obviously they will have to have been in the country already. So there's no flying in of players, obviously, with the lockdown that we have around international travel. But any international players who happen to be here would be allowed to do so. Talking of international athletes here, Paige Harib has been hosting 3 French people who were over here for the Pihar Pro and have not gone back, have obviously not been able to go back home to France. 2 other surfers and a photographer were over for that. And she is obviously a professional surfer who is in lockdown in Okura on the beach, can literally see the waves, but isn't allowed to go in and surf. So it's a little bit of sort of torture there. She says that, look, they're probably as fit as they've ever been because of all the land-based training they have been doing. She's looking at trying to qualify, or her goal for this year was to qualify for the Olympics. Obviously, that is now next year in 2021. And so she'll still be looking at doing that, as well as trying to qualify for the Dream Tour by the World Qualifying Series this year, if it obviously goes ahead. In other Olympic news, Maya Drysdale, the 2-time Olympic champion, has said that the postponement really has questioned whether he will take part in his 5th Olympics for New Zealand. He is the current champion for single sculls, winning that gold medal both in London in 2012 and Rio in 2016. He also claimed a bronze in Beijing in 2008 when he was sick. He said that the postponement really has damaged his motivation to continue. He is 41. Let's be honest, coming towards the end of his career, this would have been his final Olympics. He said he headed out for a 2.5-hour cycle ride, but after 50 minutes turned back because he just could not be bothered, to use his words. Now, there's a lot of sports people who have had so much invested in that 2020 Olympics. We've talked previously about the financial burden for some of these people, for some of these athletes who are not professional athletes, taking out time from their work or from their lives for another year to perhaps to attend the 2020 Olympics next year. And what a drain, and whether they'll be able to do that. Here we're also seeing that not only is it the financial piece, but also there is the mental side as well that is impacting some of these people. He has decided, quite rightly, not to make a decision as yet. Rushing into these things would not be the right way to go about it, especially when there is all this uncertainty around the world. But let's hope that he does make it and can get that 3rd gold medal. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Don't forget that we have got at 2 p.m. today, I have Bowls in New Zealand on for an interview. Let's be honest, a sport that has perhaps a bit of an older sort of image, but I can tell you it's a very dynamic sport from the administration side of things. So that was a really interesting interview. And I said that'll go out at 2 p.m. today. Thank you, Stephen and Ashwin, for joining me and for your updates today. Don't forget you can join us at 8 a.m. every morning here on New Zealand Sport Radio for the morning sports briefing.